Dobar dan, dragi
Good
gledalci.
afternoon, dear viewers, friends and colleagues, representatives of the government, distinguished representatives of intellectual property organizations. Good afternoon and welcome to the conference marking the 100th anniversary of the Serbian Intellectual Property Office. We're happy to have you here attending this great anniversary of the institution protecting knowledge and creativity in Serbia. Due to the current epidemiological situation, we are organizing this event online, which will not prevent us to celebrate our anniversary and discuss with our guests. Now, we would like to invite the director of the Serbian Intellectual Property Office, Mr. Vladimir Maric, to take the floor. Distinguished participants of the anniversary of the Serbian Intellectual Property Office, ladies and gentlemen, on the 15th of November 2020, our institute celebrated the 100th anniversary of its work. This extraordinary jubilee is a thing of pride for this nation and country. For the whole century, Serbia is protecting intellectual property rights, or has been protecting it for the whole century. Today we are going to go down the memory lane, talk about history, and briefly look at the future of our institute. It is in human nature to learn and find out new things, to progress and change its world. If we look around us, we will see everywhere the benefits of science and human creativity, numerous inventions that made our life safer and easier. A vaccine is one of them. It's a current topic. People might have died today from smallpox if it hadn't been for Edward Jenner. It took hundreds and thousands of years, hundreds and thousands of inventions, literary and artworks, for the thought in human mind to ripen that it's important to reward human creation. This brings us to intellectual property. One of the most important steps towards building the system of international property of international protection of industrial property was the adoption of the Paris Convention of the 20th of March 1883 that laid the groundwork for international industrial property law, and the Kingdom of Serbia with 10 other countries participated in this effort. In 1884, the Kingdom of Serbia adopted the first regulations on distinctive marks. However, our country had to wait for another 36 years to establish the administration for industrial property protection, and meanwhile it survived two Balkan Wars and World War I. Under the Saint-Germain Treaty on Peace that ended the Great War, there were 12 provisions or 12 articles on industrial property protection. So the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovenes under this treaty were obliged to establish a separate administration to protect industrial property, and thanks to the engagement of Dr. Janko Schuman, the administration for the protection of industrial property was established on the 15th of November 1920, and Janko Schuman was its first president. However, there was a lack of understanding on the part of the government in the kingdom for the work of administration. So in 1923, the then Minister of Trade and Industry, Dragutin Kojic, thought that the work of the administration was far too costly and that the administration should be closed down. So Janko Schuman wrote a very extensive memorandum trying to persuade the minister to change his mind, and he tried to indicate to and demonstrate to the minister how the institutions and foreign countries praise this administration. So he quoted the fact that Romania directly approached the administration to share with it the information that will help Romania Romania establish a similar administration of its own. And also, the International Office in Bern, Switzerland, wrote at the time that they had to express admiration towards the new Yugoslav law that was essentially based on Austrian law but improved in multiple terms that could be used as a template. So during one period, interim member of the administration was one of the greatest Serbian scientists of all times, Milutin Milankovic, a Renaissance mind, a scientist, inventor, civil engineer, and writer. And NASA ranked Milankovic among 15 most important scientists of all time, especially when it comes to researching our planet, astronomy, and climatology. And also, Albert Einstein used to work at the Intellectual Property Office in Bern for 7 years. So he was a patent engineer there, and we are really proud of the fact that the name of Milutin Milankovic is inscribed in the history of our office. The administration also dealt with protecting patents, trademarks, and industrial designs. And for instance, in early 1920s, all major international companies protected their trademarks in the Kingdom of Serbia: Croats and Slovenes, Mercedes, Ford, IBM, Coca-Cola, Gillette, to name just a few. And also there was a large number of domestic applicants from Serbia and then Croatia and Slovenia. So over the past 100 years, this office has never stopped working. It used to work to a limited extent even during World War II under the leadership of another great intellectual, Andrija Bogdanovic, who was a lawyer by profession and a French. He was educated in France. He managed to preserve the identity of the institution during difficult times of the war, and he used to work in socialist Yugoslavia in the office until he retired in 1960. After the end of World War II, new ideological, social, and economic circumstances occurred in Yugoslavia. The monarchy was abolished, and the authorities were taken of the Communist Party of Yugoslavia, led by Josip Broz Tito, took over the power. Socialism brought radical changes in all spheres of the social and political life of the country, culture, and economy. So clearly, changes took place with respect to intellectual property and industrial property protection. So these were difficult and turbulent times, full of challenges, but at the same time, it was the time of hope and progress. The country developed at accelerated pace, and intellectual property lived on, although with certain ideological connotation, but irrespective of this, its essence was preserved. In the period from 1945 to 1950, more than 150,000 domestic and international trademarks were registered in Yugoslavia. It is noteworthy that at the time, Yugoslavia continued lively and successful international cooperation with various international institutions, primarily with the International Office in Bern, Switzerland. Just a few years after World War II, Yugoslavia started building the so-called soft socialism. In early 1950s, there was a more intensive breakthrough of Western culture in this country, primarily in music and film. And immediately after the war, jazz music was treated as the arch-enemy of Yugoslavian capitalist propaganda. But as early as in 1953, autumn competition of jazz bands was organized in Belgrade at the football stadium. So the Yugoslav music scene at the time developed as one of the most fruitful and best quality in the world, and the importance of copyright increased. At the same time, the office became the champion of progressive changes in intellectual property. In 1980s, the experts of our office started extensive modernization of our patent law, led by years-long director of our office, recently deceased Blagota Žarković. So the amendments to the patent law in the late 1980s actually resulted in adjustment of the country's patent law with the requirements of market economy. A few years later, this country became the member of the European Patent Organization. Tragic events of 1990s prevented Yugoslavia from becoming the member of the European Patent Organization in 1991 as planned, but the work of Blagota Žarković has not been in vain. The groundwork that he has laid was further developed by Ms. Branka Totic, also long-standing director of the Institute, who persevered in pursuing a policy of constant modernization of the office, and she and her associates contributed to Serbia's becoming the member of this important regional organization, the European Patent Organization, in 2010. In the past 20 years, there was intensive process of modernization of the Serbian IPO, strengthening technical and human capacities, harmonization of the country's legal system with the acquis communautaire, and strengthening international cooperation. So this institute used to suffer from the lack of space and well-educated human resources, which is not the case today. So the former directors, my predecessors, Janko Šuma, Radmilo Cukavac, Andrija Bogdanović, Stojan Preknar, Milenko Jakovljević, or Dragutin Bošković would have been proud of this institution and what we have achieved so far, thanks to our hard and committed work. Over the past few years, our office has extensively focused on the collective management of copyright and related rights in Serbia, and we are very proud of this. We deeply believe that we should spread the culture of respect of copyright and related rights in this country. The system should be fostered and cherished to provide decent life to authors and related right holders. Serbian IPO manages the negotiating group for Chapter 7 and has made a crucial contribution to Serbia's harmonizing its IP legislation with the acquis communautaire. The recent European Commission country report praised Serbia for its progress in this domain, and to this effect, I'd like to stress that we have had generous support of the Ministry of Education and the Office of the Prime Minister, Ana Brnabić. I believe that we have achieved a lot in terms of digitalizing our institution over the past few years, and as of late, all administrative procedures for the protection of industrial property are managed electronically. 70% of patent, trademark, and design applications are filed online, including 50% of submissions. In 2020, Serbia made progress by 4 places on the Global Innovation Index and is now ranked 53rd. It's a great result because in 2014 we were ranked 67th, so we progressed up by 14 places in 6 years. So there is always room for improvement, but success is not in perfection, but in ability to constantly move forward. There can be no progress without hard work, sacrifice, and commitment in line with Andrić. In life, everybody have to earn their success. As for our international cooperation, we don't have a lot of time to list all the valuable things that the World Intellectual Property Office has done for us so far. Our cooperation with WIPO still is providing immeasurable contribution to building the IP system in Serbia. European Patent Organization has been supporting and assisting Serbia for all these years. If it hadn't been for EU funds and the European Patent Office that implemented EU programs, today we would not have had our education and information center that has been very successful in training business people, university staff, and civil servants. Also, with the support of EPO, our patent examiners are applying the same guidelines and tools as EPO examiners for the benefit of our rights holders. The EU Intellectual Property Office is another important partner for us. EU IPO has been supporting us when it comes to protecting distinctive marks and intellectual property right enforcement. We also have very lively and fruitful cooperation with IPOs in the region and with the Chinese IPO. And finally, let me say a few words of thanks. This celebration is organized with huge support of the WIPO in European Patent Organization and the EU IPO. I would like to thank them all from the bottom of my heart. Great support and assistance in organizing this event was provided by the Swiss Confederation and the Swiss Federal Institute of Intellectual Property, so we owe huge gratitude to Switzerland for that. And finally, I'd like to thank to all my colleagues that have participated in organizing this celebration, and I'd like to thank this wonderful anniversary to all the employees of the Serbian IPO. Thank you.
Hvala vama, gospodine Mariću.
Thank you, Mr. Maric. And now we are going to read the message of the Serbian Prime Minister Ana Brnabić. Dear Mr. Maric, it's a great pleasure for me to congratulate this anniversary to you personally and the Serbian Intellectual Property Office. There are very few institutions in Serbia that have such a long tradition, 100 years of existence and continuous work. Serbia is proud to have of the longevity and success of our institute that dates back to the 19th century. The Serbian government awards major attention and focus on the development and protection of intellectual property. It's one of the key tools for transforming local economy into labor-intensive investment based on knowledge, innovation, and creativity. And at the core of this transformation is IP as the best example of accelerated growth. Creative industries in Serbia employ more than 115,000 people, and their staff are mostly highly educated. IT, film, music, or publishing industry are the key mainstay, or actually are intensively based on intellectual property, and the share of creative industries in GDP is above 5%. And in the past 2 years, the export in creative industries in Serbia increased by 46.7%, and every year the number of businesses opened in those industries is increased by 25%. Last year, the Serbian parliament adopted a large number of regulations on IP, whereby we have modernized our legal framework, and this was confirmed by the latest report of the European Commission that actually stated that the level of IP protection in Serbia is good. This does not mean that our job is over, but I believe that the situation is good and will improve over the years. And the Global Innovation Index last year ranked us or improved our ranking by 4 places. The government recently adopted the IP development strategy 2018 to 2022, and one of the major goals of this strategy is education and boosting capacities for knowledge transfer. And also there are very attractive tax incentives for IT-based businesses, such as accelerated deduction of costs for research and development and the so-called IP box. So now we are faced with a key challenge to increase and to increasingly promote the importance of development and protection of intellectual property and to assist this transformation, and the Serbian IPO is major partner in this endeavor. I would like to thank you for all your efforts so far and wish you even more success in the years to come so that we can build together an even better environment that will be supportive to all the users of intellectual property with a view to boosting competitiveness and fast growth of Serbia. And therefore, I would like to extend my heartfelt felicitations for this wonderful jubilee. We would like to thank the Prime Minister for her felicitations and for the incentives to develop IP protection even further in Serbia. Now we are going to hear the Minister of Economy, Angelka Atanaskovic. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor and pleasure to be able to address this gathering and to congratulate the Serbian IPO on its 100th anniversary. So today, there can be no prosperous society with developed economy where IP rights are not respected. And capital goes to those is not going or not being invested in those countries where those rights, patents, trademarks, copyrights, and other intellectual property rights are not protected. And therefore, Serbia is intensively working on improving and enhancing its IP protection legal framework. The Serbian Ministry of Economy sees intellectual property as an important tool of prosperity. And according to recent research, creative industries in Serbia account for 3.9% of GDP. And together with the so-called related industries, their share is 7.3% of GDP, and they hire over 100,000 workers. We understand that creative industries such as software industries are one of the drivers of our development because we have clever, hardworking, and creative people. Serbia focuses on education and knowledge. And the Education and Information Center of the Serbian IPO Tours Serbia organizes workshops for universities, small and medium-sized enterprises, and they also support judges and civil servants in their training. And the role of the Serbian IPO is crucial. Once again, I'd like to say happy birthday to the Serbian IPO and all its employees and to congratulate to them this wonderful anniversary. Thank you, Minister of Economy, Angelka Atanaskovic. And now Mr. Darren Tong will have the floor, the Director General of WIPO. He prepared a video address marking this anniversary.
Her Excellency Prime Minister Ana Brnabić, Her Excellency Ms. Angelka Atanaskovic, Minister of Economy, Director Vladimir Maric, fellow heads of IP officers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to convey my heartfelt congratulations on the occasion of the 100th anniversary of the Intellectual Property Office of Serbia. Unfortunately, due to the global situation, I'm only able to join you virtually, but I look forward to one day visiting your beautiful capital, Belgrade. During the past 100 years, the world has witnessed an extraordinary contribution to science and culture from Serbia. For example, in the groundbreaking work of Mihajlo Pupin in telecommunications, or the novel science of Milutin Milankovic on climate change. These great minds had another thing in common. They not only obtained patents, but also understood the importance of commercializing IP so that their ideas could move to the market. Innovative thinking and understanding as the importance of IP have also characterized the work of the Serbian IP Office for a century now. The office was an early adopter of international treaties and assistance to SMEs through IP pre-diagnostics. It has put together a forward-looking intellectual property development and strategy for 2018 to 2022. WIPO had the privilege to collaborate in preparing a publication on the history of the office that contains more information on these important landmarks and developments. I warmly invite all of you to read this insightful and interesting publication. We also welcome initiatives by the government and the Serbian entrepreneurs to scale up investment in the IT sector. We see much potential in the Created in Serbia project and in the trademark Čuva Kuća. They provide excellent examples for others on how to promote an innovative and creative economy. Serbia has climbed 4 places in the Global Innovation Index 2020 ranking as compared to last year. The GII ranks world economies according to their innovation capabilities. This year, Serbia scored high in areas such as institutions, human capital and research, infrastructure, and knowledge and technology outputs. I would like to congratulate the government of Serbia and reaffirm that we stand ready to respond to further requests for assistance in developing the innovation ecosystem in Serbia. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we must pursue a shared vision that now, more than ever, we need to support our innovators, our scientists, our creators, and our entrepreneurs. We need to not only tackle the challenges of the global pandemic from a health perspective, but also lead the way to economic recovery and further growth. To use a tennis expression, I know that there are a lot of Djokovic fans out there, the ball is in our court. Together with our member states, other UN and international organizations, academia, NGOs, and businesses, WIPO will continue to pursue a holistic and multilateral approach and work together with stakeholders to build a balanced, inclusive, and dynamic IP ecosystem, one that can address the most pressing global challenges and create a better world. We know that we have a strong partner in the Serbian IP office. Let me therefore end by sincerely congratulating you for 100 years of excellent work, and I personally look forward to working closely with the government of Serbia and the office on not only further enhancing innovation and creativity in Serbia, but also in tackling global challenges and leveraging the opportunities that the IP ecosystem creates across the world. I thank you very much.
We would like to thank Mr. Darren Tong for his very inspiring address. And now we shall hear the address by the Executive Director of the EU IPO, Mr. Cristian Ashambol.
I would like to warmly congratulate the Intellectual Property Office of Serbia on reaching your 100th anniversary. It makes the European Union Intellectual Property Office look positively young since we were founded only in 1994. Since your anniversary coincides with the meetings of the office's governing bodies, I am having to send a recorded message, but I wanted to join you in spirit at least. Looking back, it is clear that Serbia has a long history of creativity and innovation, but it is great to see that you also have your eyes on the future. As the IP office of the candidate country for the European Union and a valued partner, the EU IPO and the Serbian office have already been cooperating for some years. Our work within the framework of our bilateral cooperation is focused on some practical matters that are very important for the transparency and quality of the IP ecosystem that we all inhabit. Serbian rights have been included in the important global databases covering trademarks and designs, as well as classifications for some time, that is TM-View and TM-Class, Design-View and Design-Class. In addition, we have also moved forward towards the implementation of the common practices developed under the European Trademark and Design Network. I would highlight, following last year's implementation of a common practice on figurative marks, the recent implementation of another one related to the likelihood of confusion on relative grounds for trademarks. This support for common tools and common practices is very encouraging. It is also a step towards our shared objective of making sure that creativity and innovation continue to make a contribution to quality jobs and economic and social well-being. The development of the creative industries is one of the priorities for the Serbian government. We have also been working with the EU on various projects to support the small and medium-sized companies that are so important for the future, especially following the establishment of the Education and Information Center set up with the support of the EU instrument for pre-accession assistance. In a world where COVID-19 has accelerated the move to online transactions, smaller companies in all member states are increasingly reaching out to global markets, and it is clear that they would benefit from more support in the area of IP rights. However, the last major study on this subject indicates that just 9% of SMEs within the EU have any registered rights, and most probably some of the reasons for this underrepresentation can be applied more widely. We know that the EU SMEs are put off by lack of knowledge of the advantages of IP rights or concerns about the cost of acquiring and defending those rights. On the other hand, we know that the smaller companies that have at least one registered IP right are stronger, pay higher wages, and provide the kind of quality jobs that are needed for the future. Supporting SMEs is a key part of the EU's new industrial strategy and is equally important here in Serbia. In response, the Office introduced over the summer the IDs Powered for Business portal on our website, bringing together in one place the information sources and services that are most useful for SMEs and other businesses. Before the end of this year, we will introduce an easy e-filing aimed at all SMEs, and the resources on our website may well be useful to smaller companies from wherever they are drawn. We are also looking at other initiatives to support EU SMEs under the European Commission's post-COVID-19 action plan. In the current circumstances, it is very important that all companies have access to a well-functioning IP system that is user-friendly and provides them with protection for their IP assets. This is true both inside the EU and internationally. The EU IPO's efforts ultimately depend on cooperation, and I am happy to say that the bilateral links that we have forged with the Industrial Property Office of Serbia are strong and enduring. Congratulations on your 100th anniversary, and I look forward to continuing to work with you and cooperate in the interest of all our customers and stakeholders wherever they are based.
We thank Mr. Christian Ashambo for his compliments, and now we shall hear the address of the Director General of the Institute for Intellectual Property of Switzerland, Ms. Chamartin.
Director General, ladies and gentlemen, I greatly appreciate the invitation of the Serbian Intellectual Property Office and of Director General Maric to speak at your celebration. I wish to warmly congratulate the Serbian IPO on its 100-year anniversary. This truly is a milestone, marking an occasion to celebrate the hard work and achievements of the Serbian IPO and its partners. Serbia and Switzerland hold a long-standing, dynamic partnership. Our collaboration encompasses bilateral agreements, activities at the multilateral level, and technical cooperation. All these have consolidated our trust and appreciation for one another as steadfast partners. We are thus most pleased that Serbia became a full member of CERN in March 2019, and that cooperation filters down to, for example, the universities of Belgrade and Zurich. In addition to research and education, Switzerland and Serbia also have a long-standing collaboration in the field of intellectual property. Since 2009, with funds from the Swiss State Secretariat for Economic Affairs, the Swiss Federal Institute of IP has implemented technical cooperation activities with its Serbian counterparts. The Swiss-Serbian Intellectual Property Project is now in its second phase, continuing to build on the excellent partnerships between our institute, yourselves, and your colleagues at the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology Development and at the Ministry of Agriculture and Environmental Protection. As aspired to, the implemented reforms and the move towards a knowledge-based economy have enabled Serbia to capture its innovation potential, gain competitive advantages in global markets, and established Serbia as a digital innovation hub. 100 years Serbian IPO marks a commendable and inspiring journey through history, with inevitable changes and challenges, which have given rise to innovation and the competitiveness of Made in Serbia. Alongside innovation and digitalization, we have always noted the huge potential of traditional specialty products embedded in Serbia's cultural heritage. These include linden honey from Fruška Gora, cheese from Zlatar, raspberries from Marilje, ajvar from Leskovac, and pottery from Zlakuza. The legal frameworks around these products capture the full value of geographical indications, sharing both Serbian goods abroad and supporting socio-economic development. Switzerland likewise endeavors to capture its innovation potential. We are honored once again to be awarded first place in the Global Innovation Index in 2020. Like you, we know that innovation is not realized on its own. At the core lies the intersection between healthy competition and open collaboration. Like Serbia, Switzerland is a very small country with only 8.5 million inhabitants. And with a small domestic market, Swiss enterprises must compete in the highly competitive global market. Switzerland has few natural resources, except for rocks in the form of high mountains. While these lend themselves well for branding, luckily, entrepreneurs back in the 19th century had the vision to construct railways to the top of and through these mountain ranges. The spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship remains today. In our view, much of a drive for competition and openness to collaborate begins at ground level. Qualified employees of universities and companies are able and encouraged to bring their ideas forward. An economy that supports education and works closely with research institutes makes innovation possible. Within this ecosystem, innovation, healthy competition, and an open collaboration can meet. There is no one-size-fits-all approach that guarantees success. We are happy to share our experiences and learn from others. Our partnership with the Serbian IPO and other partners in Serbia certainly illustrates this. We look forward to continuing our cooperation with the IPO, which will also include a new project, Boosting Exports Through Technoparks, also funded by SECO and implemented by us with our Serbian partners. Let me conclude by again congratulating you on behalf of the IPA and my colleagues on your 100-year anniversary. Thank you, and I wish you a wonderful celebration.
Now we're going to hear the President of the European Patent Organization, Mr. Antonio Campinos.
A very good morning to all of you. The very first thing I want to say is congratulations to the Director of the Serbian Intellectual Property Office, Vladimir Maric, and all his staff, to the government of Serbia and to its people on the office's 100-year anniversary. It's a fantastic occasion and a milestone that deserves to be celebrated. And despite the current challenges, it's great to see that you are marking the anniversary with this virtual conference. But there's no denying, these are difficult times. The world and the IP industry have undergone a transformation in 2020. And we have all come to see how deeply the pandemic is affecting people, businesses, and economies. So I'd like to begin by highlighting just how crucial IP is at the moment, and to underline that everyone in the IP community, whether here in Serbia or elsewhere, has the possibility to make a real contribution to recovery. Because innovation will not only find solutions to managing the pandemic, it will also fuel the growth needed to pull our economies out of post-COVID recession. In Europe, IP-intensive industries generate 45% of GDP and account for 39% of our employment. Those are pretty impressive figures. But with so much riding on innovation these days, the stakes have never been higher. And we know that innovation can thrive in Serbia. In 2020, Serbia moved up 4 places to rank 53 out of 131 economies in the Global Innovation Index, with particularly high levels of knowledge and technology output. Of course, this isn't really surprising from a country with such a rich tradition of innovation, and home to iconic inventors like Nikola Tesla. And Tesla is not Serbia's only inventor of note. Orgeslav Stepanovic created the world's first version of plastic, Arbanite. And it was a Serb called Nikola Bizunic who came up with the idea of hair clippers, still crucial to all those needing a haircut in times of lockdown. These inventions highlight a key point. IP rights are not just for big companies. Innovation happens at all levels of industry. And as economies try to recover from the aftermath of COVID-19, harnessing the full potential of innovation matters more than ever. So, we need to make patent protection more accessible than ever. Here, of course, The Serbian Intellectual Property Office has an excellent track record of reaching out to innovative SMEs with services to make them more competitive. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Serbian office for sharing your experiences and knowledge of supporting SMEs and universities within the European Patent Network. Like you, we believe that clear, accessible patent information is the foundation of any effective IP strategy. That's why the EPO is upgrading its network of patent information centers, or PATLIPs. PATLIPs promote decision-making driven by patent data at all levels of industry. They help potential patent applicants to understand the IP system, to identify emerging trends in patenting activity, and to turn their ideas into effective IP strategies. Looking to the future, we hope that PATLIF 2.0 will boost technology transfer even more effectively by offering even better support to universities, research centers, inventors, and SMEs. Because we want everyone to understand how patents can bring progress in society. We want entrepreneurs, inventors, and many others to get the IP bug and discover how patents can be a source of commercial success. And of course, we are counting on Serbian Intellectual Property Office as a valuable member of our future PATLIP 2.0 network. So we sincerely hope you will continue to expand the patent-related services offered by your Education and Information Center, particularly those linked to universities and technology transfer. Another way to create a more effective IP system, of course, is by working closely with international partners. Back in 1973, we embarked on a new era of cooperation, and it's one that has stimulated our innovation systems and supported inventors from Belgrade to Brussels. So we are deeply grateful for the role that Serbia has played since it became an extension state in 2001, and since it became an active and full member of the European Patent Organization back in 2010. As a result of your efforts, and those of all other European Patent Network members, the quality of our patents is higher, nationally and throughout Europe. And we plan to make the European Patent Network even stronger in the future. The first steps towards that goal was taken back in June, when we adapted our new framework for cooperating with member states. The framework rests on 4 main policy pillars: knowledge and quality, convergence of practices, work sharing and IT cooperation, where we have already made swift progress, because the positive impact of the European Patent Network is clear. The amount of patent information and technical and scientific knowledge is greater than ever before. And by working together, we are giving our scientists and researchers greater access to that information. We stimulate debate, we support education, and we are providing training in IP. And look at the effects. 100 years after Tesla tried to build the world's first wireless communication tower, we have an IP system that's far better placed to support research and development in areas like the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and batteries and electricity storage technologies. Additive manufacturing, and notably 3D printing, were instrumental in providing rapid responses to the COVID-19 crisis, for example. And they may well lead to the mass customization of manufacturing. One of our recent studies revealed a surge of innovation in the field, especially in Europe. And we can expect game-changing applications in a wide range of sectors in the near future. Together, these technologies are paving the way for automation on an unprecedented scale, from smart agriculture to smart factories and smart cities. The future of the European economy largely depends on its ability to embrace these new technologies. And IPR-intensive industries are at the forefront of these transformations. And thanks to IP, thanks to your efforts here in Serbia, and to our joint efforts in developing a European patent system, we are in a far stronger position to capitalize on them. I'll draw to a close now and simply say, on behalf of everyone at the European Patent Office, congratulations. Congratulations to all those involved in Serbian IP on this remarkable centenary. Enjoy, and Be proud of what you have achieved over the last 100 years. And perhaps, more importantly, acknowledge and celebrate the fact that those achievements have paved the way for many of the technologies that are emerging today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campinos, for a highly inspirational speech. So, on the occasion of this important anniversary, the Serbian IPO published a monograph, 100 Years of Intellectual Property Office, and we would like to thank the author, historian Dragomir Bonjic, who also enriched the history of the Serbian IPO with archive materials and the story about economic circumstances in Serbia through various times. And now we're going to read an excerpt from this monograph. In the Federal Patent Office, according to a report in the NIN newspaper in 1954, in the arms of imagination. So, we quote, the rooms are very quiet, huge chests of drawers and cupboards full of paper, tons of paper. But this is not ordinary paper. They're handwritten. They're not handwritten or written in ink or typewritten. They're written by imagination. So this is the treasury and the archives of the Federal Patent Office. We have those papers full of hope, full of dreams that are locked in those heavy cupboards. The steps are heard in the hallway. Then we see a clerk going through the files like a builder building the blocks or bricks. He goes through the files, whispering numbers, and nods his head. All the rooms are quiet. Sometimes low whisper of the archivist is heard. 17321, 17322, 17323. The papers are heavy. The descriptions of inventions, the names of domestic and foreign inventors, engineers, and professors. I find rotational lubricants, self-induction coils with hysteresis losses, magnetoelectric devices, corrugated plates for reinforced concrete girders, pedological milling machines, all those technical stuff that require high level of technical culture, and some miraculous invention. And now we're going to reflect on the history of the Serbian IPO and see a short video that was made for this occasion. Let's look at the video now.
Novembra 2020. godine Zavod za intelektualnu svojinu obeležava 100 godina postojanja i rada. Istorija Zavoda počinje kraljevskom uredbom od 15. novembra 1920. godine, kada je voljom Aleksandra I. Karađorđevića osnovana naša prva uprava za zaštitu industrijske svojine.
Zavod za intelektualnu svojinu postoji od 1920. godine, a intelektualna svojina u Republici Srbiji, verovali ili ne, postoji od 19. veka. Zašto je to važno da se kaže? Zato što je Pariska konvencija do dana današnjeg najstariji i najvažniji međunarodni ugovor iz ove oblasti, a Srbija, u to vreme Kraljevina Srbija, je bila jedna od 11 zemalja koje su potpisale taj osnovni inicijalni akt. Danas su sve zemlje sveta potpisnice Pariske konvencije.
Bilo je to vreme kada se Kraljevina Srba, Hrvata i Slovenaca još uvek teško i sporo oporavljala od posljedica Velikog rata. U takvom društvenom i ekonomskom ambijentu formirana institucija sa za to vreme gotovo egzotičnom misijom. Da štiti dela ljudske kreativnosti i da podstiče i unapređuje razvoj, kako se tada govorilo, umne svojine. Prvi predsjednik Uprave za zaštitu industrijske svojine Kraljevine Srba, Hrvata i Slovenaca bio je dr. Janko Šuman, koji je po naredbi kralja osnovao instituciju čiji rođendan mi danas slavimo. Dr. Janko Šuman bio je glavni autor našeg prvog zakona o industrijskoj svojini. Takođe, bio je i vodeći stručnjak u izradi našeg prvog zakona o suzbijanju nelojalne konkurencije i posebno zakona o autorskom pravu. Odmah po osnivanju uprave, naredne 1921. godine, prvi patent registrovan je u tek rođenoj kraljevini. Bio je to kazan za pečenje rakije, pronalazača Milana T. Jovanovića. Uvidom u najstarije registre Zavoda za intelektualnu svojinu možemo da vidimo da su još početkom 20. godina prošlog veka najveće svetske kompanije štitile svoje žigove u kraljevini. Zavod za intelektualnu svojinu danas je moderna, dobro organizovana i efikasna institucija u kojoj rade stručni i posvećeni ljudi. Zavod ima izuzetno važne nadležnosti, učestvuje u izradama zakona iz oblasti intelektualne svojine, vodi pregovore sa Evropskom komisijom oko zatvaranja poglavlja 7, pravo intelektualne svojine, rukovodi koordinacionim telom za efikasnu zaštitu intelektualne svojine. Zavod ima dugu i plodonosnu saradnju sa međunarodnim organizacijama u kojima predstavlja Srbiju, a to su Svetska organizacija za intelektualnu svojinu, Evropska patentna organizacija i Zavod za intelektualnu svojinu Evropske unije.
Patenti su snažna podrška inovacijama u svim oblastima nauke i tehnike. Kompanije koje u svom vlasništvu imaju patente i ulažu u inovaciona rešenja dobijaju sve veću vrednost na tržištu.
Jedna od glavnih naših proizvoda je mašina za savijanje aluminijumskih i PVC profila koju uspešno prodajemo u celom svetu.
Glavna karakteristika, ono što najviše izdvaja nas od konkurencije, jeste što mi koristimo, dakle, 3D kamere.
Patent je veoma bitan za jednu kompaniju zato što time stičete prednost na tržištu i vaši klijenti, vaši saradnici poštuju to i znaju da cene, pogotovo na zapadu.
Tokom 100 godina Zavod je registrovao stotine hiljada žigova. Trenutno je u Srbiji u važnosti nešto manje od 150.000 registrovanih žigova. U ispitivanju prijava žigova Zavod primenjuje savremene softverske alate i baze podataka i sprovodi praksu usklađenu sa praksom Evropske unije u ovoj oblasti. Rok ispitivanja prijava žigova u prosjeku iznosi 3 meseca.
Kaže se zapravo da je žig obećanje da će proizvod koji kupujem imati one kvalitete na koje sam ja navikao. U tom smislu žig nije samo pravna kategorija, već je i marketinško sredstvo. Žig prodaje robu.
Knjaz Miloš dobru praksu zaštite intelektualne svojine neguje još od 1993. godine kada je registrovan naš prvi žig. Mi danas imamo zaštićenih 135 žigova pred našim zavodom. Ovo je naša prva sova koja je podneta 2005. godine. U međuvremenu je ona malo odrasla. Evo je kako naša sova izgleda 2016. godine.
I ta sova postaje zaista simbol našeg brenda, toliko jak da mi danas možemo sovu da koristimo i bez logotipa, pa da svi znaju da je u pitanju Gorana brand.
Industrijski dizajn je nešto što je minimum što mora da se zadovolji da bi proizvod bio nov na tržištu, bio interesantan vašim klijentima, da biste stekli neku komparativnu prednost u odnosu na konkurenciju u šumi ove hiperprodukcije. Ako nemate novu formu, ako nemate originalan dizajn, to je po meni, nemate ni šansu da napravite neki internacionalni brend i da budete uočljivi na tržištu u nekom srednjem, a ne dužem roku.
Oznakama geografskog porekla obeležavaju se proizvodi koji potiču iz određenog geografskog područja i koji, zahvaljujući toj činjenici da potiču sa određenog podneblja, posjeduju neka karakteristična svojstva. Pirotski ćilim, leskovački domaći ajvar, futoški kupus, homoljski med. Samo su neki od primjera naših oznaka geografskog porekla. Oznaka geografskog porekla može da bude i najčešće jeste značajno marketinško sredstvo koje svom korisniku garantuje prednost u odnosu na konkurenciju u privrednoj utakmici. Proizvod označen oznakom geografskog porekla potrošači doživljavaju kao proizvod posebnih kvaliteta koje drugi proizvodi te vrste ne posjeduju. Srbija je zaštitila 88 oznaka geografskog porekla. Zavod ima nadležnosti u oblasti autorskog prava. Stručnjaci Zavoda rade na izradi propisa iz oblasti autorskog prava, vrše nadzor nad radom organizacija za kolektivno ostvarivanje autorskog i srodnih prava, vode registre deponovanih autorskih dela, izdaju dozvole za proizvodnju optičkih diskova.
U Zavodu se već 25 godina pripremaju propisi iz oblasti autorskog i srodnih prava. Oni su veoma značajni za sve autore. Njima se obezbeđuju imovinska i moralna prava u vezi sa autorskim delima. Za Srbiju je ovo posebno aktuelno zato što su kod nas u usponu kreativne industrije. Pre svega mislim na industriju proizvodnje softvera, baza podataka, video igara i drugih video i audio sadržaja. Ove industrije, zajedno sa izdavaštvom, sa filmskom industrijom, radijom i televizijom, čine 5% bruto društvenog proizvoda Srbije.
Filmski autori su možda među poslednjima ili poslednji koji su ovde shvatili da imaju prava da zaštite svoj rad. I zaista to je za sve nas jako važno, posebno za autore i reditelje starije generacije, jer daje jednu u stvari potvrdu da nešto što ste radili u životu, što se stalno emituje, u stvari vi imate neku materijalnu korist i neku, da kažem, i moralnu satisfakciju od toga. I zaista u svemu tome je nama Zavod za intelektualnu svojinu jako puno pomogao. Mi smo o tome malo znali i ljudi iz Zavoda su nam pomogli i u stvari objasnili nam koja su to naša prava uopšte.
Mnogo puta su nam pomogli i mnogo puta su nas, da kažem, izvodili iz raznih situacija koje su bile nezgodne. To je posebno interesantno kod nas, jer kod nas je dugo vremena ljudi su imali osjećaj da autorska svojina u stvari znači ničija svojina i da to svako može da koristi kako mu padne na pamet i da ništa ne plaća, što bi otprilike bilo kao da uporediš s nekim, da ti dođe neko na gajbu i da krene da ti iznosi namještaj i ti kažeš nema problema, kao naravno izvolite.
Zavod za intelektualnu svojinu je ušao u proces digitalne transformacije. Uspostavljena je elektronska pisarnica. U proseku 70% prijava i 50% podnesaka Zavod prima elektronski, što je dobar pokazatelj da smo na pravom putu. Zahvaljujući bazama podataka i registrima žigova, patenata, industrijskog dizajna i oznaka porekla koji se nalaze na web prezentaciji Zavoda, naši korisnici brže i jednostavnije dolaze do informacije.
U godini jubileja navršava se 10 godina od osnivanja Centra za edukaciju i informisanje Zavoda. U proteklom periodu skoro 20.000 učesnika prošlo je kroz obuke za različite ciljne grupe. Kroz različite projekte učinjeno je dosta i na uvođenju nastave i politike intelektualne svojine na univerzitetima. Znamo da su inovacije ključne za razvoj ekonomije i da su usko povezane sa zaštitom intelektualne svojine. Zato nam je bitno da našim privrednim subjektima pružimo informacije kako na pravi način da zaštite svoje inovacije. To činimo kroz uslugu dijagnostike intelektualne svojine koju smo do sada pružili za preko 400 privrednih subjekata.
Zavod za intelektualnu svojinu ima izuzetno razrađen taj edukativni moment. Imaju gomilu brošura, imaju veliki broj webinara, međunarodnih konferencija. Tako da u tom smislu nekako imam utisak da ne zaostajemo ni u čemu u odnosu, ne znam, na neke evropske ili svetske organizacije.
Zavod za intelektualnu svojinu Republike Srbije, između ostalog i štiteći 100-godišnju baštinu, ulazi u novi vek svog postojanja spreman za nove izazove, koje donosi dalji razvoj informatičke revolucije i sve brži naučno-tehnološki napredak.
That's how things were back in the past at the IPO. And as for the challenges posed by the modern, we can rightly say, digital era and challenges facing the global society of future generations, a world with intellectual property rights having an increasingly important role, we shall find out what the situation will be like at the panel discussion, which is just about to begin. Participants in the panel discussion are Ivan Rakonjac, Director of the Innovation Fund of the Republic of Serbia, Mihajlo Vesovic, Director of Division for Strategic Analysis at the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Irena Đorđević, Research Coordinator at NALED, National Alliance for Local Economic Development, and Professor Dr. Slobodan Marković, Intellectual Property Law Professor at the School of Law of the Belgrade University. Mr. Vladimir Marić will be moderating the discussion. I'm giving him the floor. Thank you very much. During the course of this celebration, we could see that intellectual property is a very complex and broad legal area, at the same time very dynamic. If we take a look at European directives in the area of intellectual property, we will see that the most numerous ones in the area of copyright, not because somebody likes to write directives, because objective circumstances dictate that. The technology applied to copyright keeps changing and requires new solutions at the level of the EU and other countries calling for a new method of protection of these rights. I kindly ask Mr. Slobodan Markovic, our most distinguished expert in the area of copyright, to tell us what are the changes that IT has introduced in copyright. We have also heard that the Prime Minister and Minister Atanackovic have referred to creative industries, also in the context of transforming copyright and placing it in the service of creative industries. Mr. Maric, I would first like to congratulate the office, the leadership of the office, all the employees of the office, the government of Serbia, the anniversary of this very important institution that I feel a part of, because I have cooperated with the office all my life, and in one period of time I was also the director of the office, and you were an excellent director. Thank you. So you asked me about copyright right now, and you mentioned the directives of the EU, which are, and the regulations which are the most numerous in the area of copyright. If we take a look at the preamble of the documents, as a rule, we will find that this is, quote, a very strict and efficient copyright protection system to enable creativity in Europe to be supported by appropriate funds and to ensure independence and creativity of artistic creators. So that is the concept of protection. First of all, the economic well-being of the author has to be protected, the author's autonomy, the protection of the creative industry, more specifically the capital, which finances the exploitation of copyrighted work. And in essence, we are actually providing for continuity of creativity, and we are promoting the cultural development of the society. So this is one of the most noble missions when it comes to branch of law. So if we dare ask whether everything is really like that, so then the person will be faced with a challenge. The reasons being that, first of all, the person will be offered to read some of these studies about the creative industries and economics and facts about GDP. The figures are impressive. We are sure that the performance of the industry would not be that good if it wasn't for the creative practice. And that is why we have to provide for efficient legal protection for these activities and this industry. So copyright has to serve the industry. When it comes to the right of authorship or copyright, the situation is more difficult in that respect, because you will never encounter a single official document except for cases that refer to some very famous figures, Paul McCartney, Potter and others, who've become very famous people thanks to copyright. But what about all the others? Perhaps one of the only serious study that deals with the position of authors is authored by Mr. Kretschner from Germany in 2012, who compared certain studies with regard to the economic situation in this respect, in the position of authors. The distribution of income when it comes to copyright is not regular. The lower level of 50% of composers earn some 5% of all the earnings. The lower part of authors of literary works also earn some 5%. Visual artists, some 10%. So this is close to the level of poverty. On the other hand, the upper 10% of authors receive disproportionately high amounts, 40% when it comes to writers and composers, 80%. So when it comes to additional jobs, whether at school or in a library and so on, and other sources of earnings, this measure level of inequality comes close to some other profession. Why am I referring to all this? The conclusion would be as follows. Copyright has integrated itself excellently in the system of liberal capitalism, the system that prompts this redistribution of wealth, concentrating huge capital in the hands of a small number of people, leaving on the other side a whole host of creators in a precarious position, not having any certainty in any respect. You've mentioned new technologies. In the light of all that I've just said, let me note that Internet has exempted the authors in many respects when it comes to the creative industry, because production has become much cheaper and distribution has become practically free. There is practically no need for employing the industry. And if you add to this the phenomenon of this mass piracy, which has not really jeopardized all the whole situation, and authors themselves allow their works to be found on the internet, you will understand that the mantra that we mentioned at the very beginning is really on an uncertain footing. So we should really check our understanding and the reasons for the existence of copyright. This Kretschmer study is entitled, Does Copyright Matter? You see, the world is not ready yet, and I will not discuss Serbia at all, to start discussing this major issue, because there is a huge political influence on the legislative power. We as a small country, we can just follow the developments and the trends. What I would like us in Serbia to be able to do is to start trying to understand intellectual property and copyright in particular as an instrument of cultural policy and not to rely on it excessively. We should simply place it in the appropriate place. The fact that we have good movies filmed here in our country, that doesn't mean much. We, as taxpayers, make our contributions to different funds, etc. The same happens in the EU. Copyright does not perform its mission in that respect, but so copyright is just a segment of the general cultural policy which should be rechecked, reviewed, and we should formulate the system that will last for a longer period of time. I'm sorry if I've taken too much of your time. No, this is very interesting, an interesting view of copyright. Since recently, we've formed this film organization for the first time, and for the first time, our film authors have the possibility of exercising a part of their rights through the system of collective management of rights. It all, of course, depends on the level of their organization, on the level of the agreement among them, and it depends on the extent to which they're ready to come out into the arena. So I just wanted to mention this benefit or this facility that we've had since recently here in Serbia. And now let me address Mr. Rakonjac. We have also heard that innovations are the driving power of economic development in the world, but it sounds too general. So could you please tell us, from your personal perspective or experience, how do you view this development path from the idea to the realization of the project? Just as Woody Allen said, I'm an author without any inspiration, but when I get the funds, I get all the inspirations I need. So does that apply to our situation as well? Yes, good day to all. I would like to congratulate you for the first 100 years. I'm sure history will go on. And while we listen to the introductory part of this program, I took note of the fact that industrial property protection was present here in Serbia as a country that adopted that principle among the first in the world. So my answer to the question, as opposed to Woody Allen, here people usually have certain ideas. But you know how it goes. You have an idea to start a great business, or you have an idea for a great invention, or you believe you do. And the path from the idea and the realization of that idea coming to the product is very rough and tough. The problem there is certainly the fact that you need funds. So you can go and borrow money, you can take a credit, a loan from a bank. And as an enthusiast, it doesn't matter how old you are, whether you're young or not, you go to a bank and say, I have a fantastic idea, and I suppose you know what the answer will be. Things don't work like that. You know what banks will tell you. That's the reason why a large number of serious countries provide financial support, and not only financial, for the development. In other words, they provide support for the implementation, realization of an idea at an early stage. That is why I referred to the fact that the economy relies on innovation. What does that mean? That means that in the first stages of the development of a certain idea, technology, prototype, you need money, you need funds that you can get. It is referred to 2 F's or 3 F's, friends and family, or friends and family and fools. And you usually get grants or funds that you don't have to pay back. There are usually programs based on which young enterprises, when they have certain ideas which are risky but good ideas, you see, because people usually look at risk as a threat. However, whoever risks can profit, and most often projects related to innovations and technological development are quite risky. But if it wasn't for that risk that people assume, we would not have any new technologies nowadays. For instance, smartphones, these touch-sensitive screens, etc. If we translate it to simple terms, we have this fund for innovation, and it has programs. And the first programs that actually emerged in our country was the program for early development, based on which applicants can get grants. I will not go into details, but a certain amount of funds can be obtained. And what is important is that that project has to involve value added in terms of intellectual property. No matter whether protection rights will be provided or not. That's another subject. On the other hand, the product or the service, that is what is important, is that the product and the service has a potential in the market and that it can generate profit. And that's how it's been functioning here. We have a program portfolio for different users, involving beginners in business to scientific and research organizations and consortia comprising institutes and research companies, etc., based on which all of these can get funds to develop the technological part, or the part relating to intellectual property or to the business model, which is equally important in the market. And that has been functioning properly. Over the past 10 years, we've had quite a large number of applications. Have you made any analysis in that respect, depending on the program? We were speaking about startups. We support development of applications, programs, IT, and communications. But when it comes to programs that involve more experienced companies, and when it comes to programs that provide support to scientific research organizations and consortia, there is a different distribution of applications and projects. Development of software solutions, for instance, are not prevalent there, but engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, biomedical engineering, agriculture. So these are the major areas. If we take a look at patent applications at the IPO, there is a similar situation with respect to them. We'll get back to this subject later on. And now I'm addressing Mr. Mihailo Vesovic, Director of the Division for Strategic Analysis Services and Internationalization at the Serbian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which has a long history, an institution of extreme importance, providing great support to our corporate sector. Since recently, you have this collective trademark, Čuvar Kuća. You've heard from the addresses by our guest from WIPO. There has been mention about this. Can you tell us more about the campaign?
Thank you very much for the invitation. Even though we are traditional institutions, 160 years old or 100 years old, these institutions have been modernized and achieved a lot when it comes to their respective positioning towards businesses. And I have to be very frank, without good communication with the government authorities, we would not have been able to achieve such results. You have mentioned the collective trademark Čuvar Kuća that was registered by the Serbian Chamber of Commerce, and I must tell you that this was our attempt at responding to challenges in this difficult year and the global developments. So, in times of crisis, security of supply and security of suppliers when it comes to particular types of goods is important for any crisis management, health crisis management or any other type of disaster response and management anywhere in the world. So the message from the businesses, from the economy, is that we have to localize products as much as possible. There is a global trend called nearshoring. So companies are thinking about moving their production and their suppliers closer to Europe. We used to have we did have stable supply of food during the crisis. This means that Serbia has enough goods that are locally produced, and also efforts were exerted to ensure supply for the local manufacturers so that the economy can function at the times of disruption of the supply chains. So Čuvar kuća trademark means that there are products in Serbia that can actually use this trademark of quality, and that demonstrates that the value of this product was generated in Serbia. Various trademarks or various marks talked about the content of raw materials, etc. But when we talk about the value of a product, intellectual property element is included, regardless of whether the product is protected or not. So those products bearing Čuvar kuća trademark speak about their value once they leave the factory warehouse. They actually generate value. And this brings us to a clear characteristic that 80% of value is generated at that time. And when you buy a high-quality product that maybe is of a better quality than an imported product, is the product that will permanently remain in Serbia and help preserve the economy. So that's an important message. Another important message is that the value of that product does not only include the material, but the know-how and the knowledge that was invested in the making of that product. So together with the Serbian IPO, we actually advocate for increasing the level of knowledge and awareness of companies and manufacturers of the value of their product. We not only fight against counterfeiting, but we also have to explain to people what is illegal, what is covered by intellectual property rights. Therefore, it is very important to actually indicate the overall investment in the product, and that somebody should demonstrate that strict environmental criteria are met. And the effect of this campaign has been very affirmative. It is not just a campaign to prompt people to buy locally made products, but to buy high-quality products and to keep the value generated through that product in Serbia. And we have scores of products that actually carry the brand Čuvar kuća, mainly from the food processing industry, such as dairy products, also certain kinds of beers, soft beverages or juices, and even the pharmaceutical industry that is very alive. There are some local pharmaceutical producers that produce dietary supplements. And when it comes to the textile industry, you know that the raw material itself cannot be fully manufactured by Serbian companies, and in those cases we allow 60% as opposed to 80%, or for example, metal industry, traffic signs, agro machinery or agricultural machinery, etc. Even the construction industry has joined in, so we have a broad spectrum of companies that are involved, and so important to raise consumers' awareness to help them understand what Čuvar kuća trademark is. And I must say that there are companies that are the closest to the consumers, and their message is very important. Also, it is essential for this point in time that Čuvar Kuća has a very strong footing. We will be expanding this campaign even further for customers and consumers and companies to understand that they don't have to import all raw materials, and then to ensure the manufacturing and supply chain. Thank you very much for your detailed intervention. So Čuvar Kuća as a collective trademark is a distinctive mark, just like any other trademark. But what is characteristic of collective marks? According to their legal nature and their function, they are very close to geographical indications under the General Act on Collective Trademark. People who buy products protected by this trademark are very close to formal quality marks, so they know that the product has this particular quality. So this is the difference from the collective mark and the classical type of trademark. So far, we haven't had a collective trademark in our history that has been promoted and advertised so much and that has acquired so many users. I believe this is just the beginning of a campaign called Created in Serbia that has to be educational. And using that campaign, we also promote quality marks, geographical indications that actually give advantage to those products. So we will not stop at that. We are going to try to contribute in multiple ways to raising awareness of companies and consumers alike, and what it means when a large percentage of money remains in the country, thanks to this collective trademark, and also in the context of the health crisis that we are all undergoing. So now I will give the floor to the only lady on the panel, Ms. Irena Đorđević. On several occasions, we have heard that the Global Innovation Index is something that has been increasingly attracting the attention of the decision makers and how important it is for the country and its economy. So can you tell us, please, what Serbia as a country can do to boost its ranking on the GII? Thank you very much. I would also like to felicitate you on your important anniversary. As for the Global Innovation Index, we have heard a lot about Serbia's ranking and how this ranking has been improving every year. So it's a highly complex index covering multiple dimensions, and therefore it is very interesting. I would like to add to what has already been said in the introductory remarks. Many countries across the world have adopted GII as a reference point. When designing innovation policies, they look at what they can do to improve the indicators that will ultimately result in improving their position or their ranking on the GII. So it doesn't matter if we occupy the 55th or 53rd place, but it's a similar concept as the World Bank Index or Doing Business list. So this actually tells investors what they can expect and how their investments can be secure. So the GII maps certain key weaknesses and key strengths, and this can help in an illustrative way the decision makers. So I will just tell you about the latest report and the key strengths and weaknesses of Serbia. The 53rd place of 131 countries is not a bad ranking, but it can always be improved, of course. Countries that have similar level of development, we are in the first fourth, but when we look at European countries, of 39 European countries, we are the 34th country. Okay, We are a small country, but we can do more. And given the interest of the decision makers, and we have to address this issue in a systemic way. As for Serbia's key strengths, first of all, we have the cost of redundancies. So we top the list there. This is one of the indicators. And you will see what the index measures. Also, as for the ISO standard 14001, we are on the 4th place when it comes to the publications of scientific work. As for the weaknesses, we are the weakest when it comes to overall spending on software, but there is a lack of data there. So there is a potential for Serbia to improve its ranking by obtaining data for certain indicators. Also, the level of development of clusters, where we rank 98. And also the investment of the government in high school students. This is where we rank the 90th. So I just wanted to illustrate what this index in fact measures and what NALED is going to do in the coming period. Just like there is a coordinating body systemically monitoring the ease of doing business and the World Bank doing business list, we plan to set up a coordinating body to monitor the GII and to thereby create Serbia as a good innovative destination. So can you tell us when we can expect a more specific headway? So this year we had a great headway, even though you mentioned the situation in education. A lot of indicators are included there. I'm not an expert on this, but it seems what you have indicated at one point is that there are certain indicators for which we lack data. So could we undertake certain activities or update certain activities in the light of those indicators, or make some rectifications? There is a whole set of indicators where we lack data, also when it comes to surveys. So it's just the matter of subjective assessment of the respondent as to the state of the clusters. There is a series of indicators in the GII. How much Wikipedia content is modified in the context of Serbia. So maybe we could give homework to high school students to improve or edit the texts on Wikipedia. It's just a technical segment of indicators, but indeed we need to work on those systemic indicators that refer to investment in innovation and creating an enabling regulatory framework for innovations. Thank you very much for your eloquent explanation. We have some questions from the audience. A question for the Innovation Fund. Which services of research and development are offered to SMEs with innovation vouchers, and how these services contribute to boosting their market competitiveness? This is the question from the European Patent Organization. It's an interesting question. Innovation vouchers are one of our most recent mechanisms. What distinguishes them from other programs that I have mentioned, the concept of those other programs is such that within a certain period of time, 1 year or 2 years, a certain product or technology or service should be developed. And this includes a lot of components and influential factors, whereas the vouchers are a quick mechanism less money is received through the vouchers, 8,000 dinars, up to 8,000 dinars per voucher. And on the other hand, we have small and, or actually small and micro enterprises that need certain type of service, such as development or improvement of certain product, new product development, laboratory testing, and so on and so forth. So this set of services exist, and since the micro and SME sector usually lacks capacities for research and development, or even some more complex engineering tasks or laboratory tasks, they may apply for the voucher to find the bidder. It can be any science and research institution in Serbia that is accredited with the ministry in accordance with the applicable regulations, so they can apply for the vouchers, and we approve this within 1 week or even within 3 or 4 days, so we do not do any project evaluation. And then the company has to use this voucher within the next 6 months. And how this boosts the level of competitiveness? Well, it generates added value for the company, either by boosting or enhancing the technology or the product itself that the company lacks capacity to do on its own. So they get a service from a relevant research institution, and then they are linked with the research sector, and then we monitor this cooperation, and figures show that this is not just a one-off type of cooperation, but this cooperation, in fact, continues. So after forging such partnerships, those companies and science and research institutions apply together for some other programs that we have for technology transfer, etc. So it's a win-win situation, and this brings multiple benefits. It's a highly popular mechanism. So I learned something new today, and thank you for those great information. A question for Professor Markovic: how depositing a work of art can actually contribute and ensure protection? So copyright protection occurs when the work is created. You can prevent others from using your work of authorship. So the problem is how to prove authorship. If there is a dispute, if you were the first to have created this work or somebody else did it before you. So this deposit can actually be proved that on a particular date you deposited your work with an authorized institution such as the Serbian IPO. So depositing actually can be used as proof if there is a dispute of authorship. So it's not useless in any case, but the very act of depositing will not change anything in terms of exploiting, if you exploit your work and generate income therefrom. I have a question for Irena. How do you see the importance of intellectual property in innovative business transformation? Let's start from innovative transformation. So today it has become an imperative for regular functioning of the economy. During the COVID-19 crisis, we have seen various attempts of businesses to cope with the crisis in innovative ways. So the tourism sector was most affected. So Airbnb actually made the shift from daily rental to monthly rental, or rental properties were transformed into office premises, and also we had farmers when green markets were closed. So they actually created Facebook accounts offering their products online to remain in touch with their customers. So innovative transformation should be viewed not only in the context of digital transformation, but in the context of innovative approach to regular business operations. So innovation is based on ideas that can be game changers. So the first step, when somebody has an idea and shapes this idea into a particular product, if it is a patent, the first step would be to have that invention protected. So we're living in a global village where information spreads very fast. So your idea can quickly become somebody else's idea. So an invention that is not protected can become somebody else's invention. So we had a recent case of a professor whose patent were illegally used by the Marvel company. So it was a court case that lasted for years. So this illustrates how difficult it is to defend a protected right.
It was interesting for me viewing your recordings regarding videos regarding IPO, which provided information about a device for feeding fish. So the author protected the device immediately. And when he started with the marketing, he was faced with huge problems from competition. And what he did very wisely was that he managed to protect everything, managed the issue, and now he has a protected product on the market. Therefore, it is very important to provide for protection, intellectual property protection, because when speaking about the economy, it provides a better quality of the work, better quality employment for people who are involved. One of the most frequent dilemmas that my associates who work in the Education Information Center encounter is that people tend to say, well, what is that for? What is intellectual property protection for? It is true that you can survive without intellectual property, but it is a very important lever. And as Professor Markovic has said, this world is a world of inequality. We've had the possibility of reading in the newspapers, in the media, that some 80 people in the world hold the entire wealth, global wealth. On the other hand, children are still dying from famine and hunger. And therefore, we should not be non-critical and just commend our work. We have to identify all the areas where improvements can be introduced. I have a question for Mr. Vesovic, even though he's explained everything in detail. Since we are speaking about a collective trademark, just like in the case of geographical indications, of essential importance is the quality control or quality assurance. So can you please tell us whether you have some additional ideas when it comes to similar collective trademarks? when it comes to the context of general digitalization, this process has been fully digitalized. It is online. The case goes to a technical commission or board that is comprised of appropriate experts in different areas, and the commission provides its view. Then the whole thing goes to a council, which is comprised of people from the academic circles, people who are familiar with technology and consumer protection. And after that, the trademark is granted protection for 3 years. Every year, we can control the situation. Of course, the trademark can be revoked or withdrawn if proven that certain of the criteria applying to the market has not been implemented. It is very important for us as holders of the collective trademark, but this is also important for consumers and all the others, the beneficiaries or stakeholders. I missed stressing something which is very interesting to me, and that is the fact that foreign companies which have invested in Serbia are eager to get this collective trademark. So that product, no matter whether it is under the brand of a foreign company, is a localized product, and that is important for us. So the trademark has been well received by companies. Something that I also want to stress is that currently we have approximately 140,000 trademarks protected in Serbia, out of which only 30,000 refer originally to Serbian producers. The rest are trademarks that have been protected by foreign companies which have come to our market. This, of course, speaks for itself. It speaks in favor of the fact how much developed countries pay attention to this, whereas we are still lagging behind a little bit. But this tells us that that is the right way to proceed. I'm sure that with all this, we shall contribute to the awareness of the companies and the consumers, and that we shall promote protection of their trademarks if they have them. Next year, we shall do our best to introduce another mark, another trademark, which will be subject to somewhat milder criteria. So anyone who wants to have this mark made in Serbia will have to meet this level of having 60% of the content of the product produced in Serbia. But please don't be too mild, because you know the rule. If you make a string too tight, it will break. If you do the opposite, it will not be good either. We're coming close to this discussion, and Professor Markovic, we have a question from our viewers. When it comes to the protection of visual artists in the world, can Professor tell us more how visual artists can exercise these rights here in our country? If you can tell us something. Yes, I can, of course, say some basic things. There are certain basic authorizations that refer to the copies of the work. So lending that is not subject to exclusive authorization in the context of copyright. I can give a very brief answer. There are no possibilities, and that's it. When it comes to visual artists, copyright and people dealing with copyright are aware of the fact that visual creation has been damaged to a certain extent by the treatment in the area of copyright, because visual artists earn benefit from their work by selling the original copies, and once they sell them, they have no contact with them anymore. The other possibility provided by copyright refers to retransmission, etc. This does not apply here. So if we take a look at the scope of benefits for visual artists, it is very small. However, copyright involves an institute that attempts to substitute this, and I think it hasn't been perceived here adequately, and that is a resale right, right of visual artists. If they sell their work, they have the right to request the owner of the copy to notify them if they sell that work to a third party to provide the author with a certain percentage. But there are certain limitations to this. If we're speaking about sale and purchase between natural persons, then one thing applies. If we're speaking about purchase and sale via authorized institutions such as galleries, etc., then it's another. But we can see that in the UK, France, and in the US, this institute has been widely used. You see, it raises the price, the cost of the transaction. So if I want to sell an expensive painting, I can opt for not addressing a gallery to do that, but meet the purchaser somewhere else, and you avoid the whole issue. But there is sense in getting involved in the purchase and sale transaction via the authorized institutions because they can give you a guarantee of authenticity. They provide a certain kind of legal protection in case of any issues. And that's why in the majority of cases, original works of art, paintings, are mainly sold via authorized institutions. If I was such an artist, I would do my best to somehow prompt resolving this issue via appropriate institutions. But we do have an institution that regulates this, and we have a strategy designed to attract visual artists or painters. We have all the other organizations, but this one is still missing. And I believe that we shall have one in full scope very soon or shortly. Since we have just a few minutes left, I kindly ask you to tell us, if you feel so, to tell us something for the end of this panel on the occasion of this celebration, if you're inspired to do that. If you're not inspired, then let me use this occasion to announce, you see, the fact that NALED, with the support of Philip Morris, has commenced a 3-year project. So this is a good opportunity because it has to do with innovators and intellectual property protection. This is an important project that will run for 3 years, and it will provide support to digital transformation for small and medium-sized companies. What is the difference of this project with regard to other projects? We've treated 3 major problems. First of all, funds, financial funds in the form of grants. Then development provides different forms of subsidies, tax credits, and our intention was to enable this kind of support through grants. $300 million have been allocated for this. With the financial funds, innovators will also be provided with expert assistance and support for, let's say, placing their product on a foreign market, etc., or developing their patents. And we shall also help them in taking part in international conferences to provide financing and all that with the aim of enabling them to be sustainable. Then we have involved the regulatory framework for innovations. We've discussed just before the panel in reference to intellectual property rights. Under Chapter 7, we are faring rather well in that respect, but what we have to work on more are administrative procedures that burden innovators. When it comes to creative industries and authors, what authors and people from this creative branch have said is that they're burdened by the cost of, in other words, 48% that they are liable to expend or pay on the basis of copyright agreements or author services. So I'm stressing this, that there is a possibility of reducing these costs by 50% for natural persons. So these are some very important steps that we've undertaken in the administrative area. And let me say something about the promotional part. I would like people to understand in general why innovations are so important, and I am in favor of this new approach that is available. I'm inviting everyone to visit the website, the IPO and the fund, the Innovation Fund, because you can learn so much from these concrete examples. We've done our best to see to it that this project that we are developing is not just competitive in relation to others, but that it provides Serbia with better conditions. Yes, we have so many colleagues that should be acknowledged here. The IPO and the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, as general representatives of the economic sector, they have been cooperating through the Council for the Development of Economy and in other ways. And perhaps we should do more to support public administration in adjusting itself to the new developments and trends in the market. I think that the gap is running or becoming rather large. You see, everyone should be able to understand all these changes, because all those who have to benefit from this legal protection have to be able to apply all that they need to. When we discussed the distribution of projects, patents across different sectors of the economy, I have a question for you in reference to whether and to what extent you have been following the running of our programs, the development of our programs and invitations for all of them. Yes, I'm aware of that. Perhaps I'm not that present, but my associates are. For instance, have you taken note of the fact that the number of patent applications has increased? Yes, we have taken note of that, but the increase is not that significant. I have to say that similar to Slovenia or Croatia, we share the situation. There is an analogous situation in terms of the number of inhabitants. The number of European patents is much higher, but there has been a certain level of growth. You see, the essence is not in the number of patents, but in their quality. It's better to have one exceptional patent, which really opens new jobs, generates profit, and also contributes in terms of tax for the state. You see, the invention has to be able to live in the market. Irena said that inventors have been complaining about the maintenance taxes. We really have to be objective. I'm a civil servant whose duty is to serve all these people. But we have to be aware of the fact that intellectual property rights have to be such to be able to provide you with appropriate profit. Otherwise, why protect your invention? I recently listened to the presentation. I listened to the presentation of the Swiss IPO director, who said, if you don't have funds to protect your invention at court, then perhaps it is better to just keep it for yourself at home, because that's how the world is. You see, there are always issues that we will be facing and challenges, but we must never stop resolving the problem. I have been involved in this whole area for the past 40 years, and I still remember my initial impression of intellectual property and compare it to my current opinion. If I compare the two extremes, you see, first of all, I was very enthusiastic. Nevertheless, I'm quite clear about the fact that intellectual property is just a small segment of a very complex mechanism of the innovation and the cultural policy, and I think that we have also noted that here. Intellectual property is perhaps the most regulated area because it is legally regulated. Perhaps the best regulated segment of that whole mechanism. But if there is no coordination with all the others who support with all their efforts innovation in intellectual property will not be successful. China, for instance, you see, China has always been objected for the fact that there was no intellectual property there. That's the best proof, perhaps, that there are some powers which are beyond intellectual property that provide that strength and vitality for development. Intellectual property should just provide a certain boost to all this. So if we let experts deal with intellectual property and we provide energy and support for all the others who create, then we will have the real products. I believe that future generations will be able to resolve this in a much better way, but we are doing our best. Thank you very much. This was really an honor for the IPO, and thank you very much for taking part in our celebration.
Thank
you very much for this very interesting discussion, which focused on technological innovations and challenges of the digital era. I believe you enjoyed it as much as I did, and that you enjoyed the answers and discussions by our colleagues and experts. I have to say that on the occasion of the IPO Jubilee, 4 postal stamps have been issued. One with the image of director of the IPO, Mr. Janko Schumann, which has been mentioned several times today. Another one that refers to the patent that has to do with the brandy brewing barrel, and which bears the national symbol of, and that is the Pirot carpet. The Museum of Science and Techniques has joined us in the marking of this Jubilee. There is an exhibition that has been staged at the museum, which will be on during the course of this and the next month. And It displays the patents of our famous inventors. And now, let us hear the performance of the string quartet of Radio Television of Serbia. The first number that they will perform is called Silken Thread, which reminds us of our ancestors. The second number is Little Girl, a number which was recorded for a local film and which became very famous.
Dakle, bio je ovo divan
This was a wonderful performance by the string quartet of Radio Television of Serbia, and we have also reached the end of our celebration. Thank you very much for taking part in the discussion. We thank the colleagues and all the experts for enabling us to get a better insight into the work of the IPO. I thank you once again and wish you all the best.